Relax. Okay, relax. I did not enter. If you touch me, I will grab you. If you touch me, I will grab you. Okay. Okay, but don't touch me. Okay.
Quick question. When an agency is already getting dragged in the streets, in the courts, and in the headlines, what do? Do you tighten accountability? De-escalate tactics? Stop treating law enforcement like a merch drop? Sorry, the answer was, how about we take this show international? Because that's what this current administration is doing. New reporting says an ICE agent tried to enter Ecuador's consulate in Minneapolis. Consulate staff blocked the entry, and Ecuador sent a formal note of protest to the U.S. Embassy in Quito. And then there's reporting that ICE personnel are headed to Italy for the Milano Cortina Winter Olympics in a security support role. And Italy immediately felt the need to clarify they will not be on the ground, which is diplomatic for, oh my God, stay away from us and keep your chaos to yourselves.
Pierre Francesco Maiorino is the leader of the Democratic Party group in the council.
I believe this is truly very bad news. We don't want Trump's thuggish squads here, people who kill civilian citizens. We don't need them. I don't understand what they're even doing here. And so we think that the government and all institutions together should say, we don't want you.
And all of this is happening while reporting continues to say that the identities of agents and officers at the scene of Alex Pretty's killing have not been made public, even as at least 2 agents were placed on administrative leave. This is Raw America. I'm Michael St. Gregory. Let's get into it. You cannot export security when what you're actually exporting is an accountability crisis. Now the absurd thing. This administration is using ICE like a Swiss Army knife for bad vibes. Need a show of force? Need a crackdown aesthetic? Need a political headline that says, I am strong in all caps? Well, ICE has got your back. And as for the consequence, when armed power operates behind masks physically and institutionally, regular people lose the ability to tell who did what and how to hold anyone responsible. And when you normalize that model abroad, you don't just damage communities, you create diplomatic blowback. Here's why you should care, even if you hate politics. Because unidentified people with guns acting under color of law isn't a policy preference. It's a civilization problem.
A militia that kills, a militia that enters into the homes of people signing their own permission slips. It is clear they are not welcome in Milan without a doubt. Those are the words of the mayor of Milan after it emerged that a unit of ICE will be present during the Olympic Winter Games in Milan.
In a minute, we're going to show you how an ICE agent allegedly tests the boundary of Ecuador's consulate like it's a locked bathroom at a Starbucks. And then we'll hop over the Atlantic to the Olympics, where Italy is saying, you guys can come, but they're not allowed inside the building. You got to stay out there and do your little goose-stepping thing. And then finally, the masks. Why the administration claims they need them, why the public hears accountability off, and why in a case like Alex Pretty's, where identities aren't publicly clear in major reporting, every masked agent becomes indistinguishable on purpose. Finally, the facial recognition question. What's verified about tools like Mobile Fortify? What's still unconfirmed about Pretty specifically? And why secrecy plus surveillance is the exact recipe for a country that's starting to look like it's already past the audition for a dystopia and is just headed confidently into the callbacks. Reports citing Ecuador's foreign ministry says an ICE agent attempted to enter Ecuador's consulate in Minneapolis, but was stopped by a consulate staff member, and Ecuador filed a formal protest demanding it doesn't happen again. I need you to absorb how insane this is at a basic human level. A consulate is not a kiosk at a mall. You can't just stroll in there like you're going to order a Cinnabon. Can't say, oh, I'm just going to pop in here real quick, like you're some friendly neighbor, because we all know they're very unfriendly to our neighbors. Treaty law says consular premises are inviolable, and authorities generally can't enter areas used for consular work without consent, except narrow emergencies. A consulate is a diplomatic airlock. You don't shove past it unless you're trying to turn domestic enforcement into international incident, which is something apparently we've been really trying to break a record on. And the same coverage places this amid Operation Metro Surge, described as involving about 3,000 heavily armed ICE and Border Patrol agents deployed to Minnesota. And if you're thinking, well, come on, isn't this a one-off? Well, there's also reporting of a Minnesota federal judge ordering ICE leadership to court over failures to comply with court orders, including a contempt warning. And that's not my editorializing. That's a judge basically saying, guys, I'm running out of patience. And there's also reporting that ICE issued new internal guidance telling officers in Minnesota not to interact with agitators, to issue commands via megaphone, and to focus on people with a criminal nexus, basically telling them, stop doing all your shooty side quests. Now, you don't have to share my political beliefs to understand how dangerous it is when an agency treats court orders like spam emails. If the government can act like the Geneva Convention is more like the Geneva Suggestion, well, your rights turn into a rumor. Now we talk about Alex Preddy with care. I'm not going to be here mocking any sensitive subject matter. What I will mock is the administration's conduct and the agency's posture. Coverage says at least 2 agents involved in the fatal shooting of U.S. citizen Alex Preddy were placed on administrative leave, the equivalent of a slap on the wrist.
2 federal officers who fired shots, ultimately killing Preddy, have been placed on administrative leave, paid administrative leave. This is standard operating procedure when there is an officer-involved shooting.
Which means they have procedure should these things happen, meaning they were expecting it to happen. And reporting says an initial government review did not mention Preddy brandishing a firearm despite early official claims emphasizing a weapon. That same reporting describes videos showing the gun removed before shots were fired. And here is the accountability core sentence that should haunt everyone. Reports say the identities of the agents and officers at the scene have not been made public. And it seems like they won't be anytime soon. Administrative leave is not transparency. It's a pause button. And when the identities aren't public, you're not just withholding names, you're creating a trust vacuum. Reports say that ICE personnel will help protect U.S. delegations at Milano Cortina Winter Olympics in a security support role, backing diplomatic security. And Italy stressed that ICE won't be on the ground, but will only be confined to U.S. diplomatic offices. Well, I certainly feel a lot better. The Olympics are supposed to be grace, discipline, human achievement. The United States are supposed to send their absolute best in athletic accomplishments, but apparently we're also sending over the leftover trigger-happy trash.
Protesting at the Lombardy Regional Council, Italy's leftist Democratic Party has a message.
If they come, it will be to cooperate, not to intervene on the streets, but to work together with the police, like police from other countries.
ICE out rallies and Italian officials are basically saying, hey, you can come, but you have to stay inside the consulate like you're grounded. Italy is not exactly underprepared, and that's the international problem in a sentence. ICE does not arrive as a neutral security asset. ICE arrives as a symbol. The reports are also connecting the anger in Italy to outrage over recent shootings and the political controversy around ICE operations.
Moreover, there are other countries that also have their own security measures in place specifically to support their heads of state. So this is not a matter concerning the Olympics, but the individual person. These are technical matters. In my opinion, it is wrong to argue otherwise.
Even if you love tough enforcement, you should still hate tough enforcement with no identity. Because if you can't identify who did what, you can't deter abuse. You can't fix policy. You can't even have a functional argument. Domestic enforcement is already inflaming cities, some literally, filling court dockets and provoking protests. Now add consulate incidents and overseas developments. That's how a domestic legitimacy crisis turns into a diplomatic liability. And if you want a reality check on the politics, polls have found a majority of Americans say immigration enforcement efforts have gone too far, and approval of Trump's immigration handling slipped to 39% in that poll. Now let's talk about the masks. Why did they cover their faces? The administration's stated rationale points to a sharp increase in threats toward ICE officers as justification for protective measures. Threats are real, doxing is real, they don't want targeted harassment. But here's the problem. A mask is not just fabric. A mask is a policy choice. The stormtroopers in Star Wars all wore the same helmet so that you would dehumanize them, and that you couldn't tell which ones killed Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru and which ones were just on sanitation patrol on the Death Star. That's not just science fiction. That's social engineering. And in a case like Freddy's, where reporting says the identities of the agents and officers at the scene haven't been made public, this is what the system does to the public. It forces people into an ugly assumption set. Let me say it very clearly and precisely. We are not accusing every masked agent of being involved. But if you don't identify who they are that were involved in the incident, every single person who sees someone in ICE uniform must automatically assume that they were involved and that they can do it to them.
I'm scared ICE will end up at my kids' school. I love my kids. Like, that 5-year-old is the same age as my little one. The idea that they're invading, this is scary.
The family is hoping something changes before another person is shot and killed by ICE.
Wired reports on Mobile Fortify, a facial recognition tool used by CBP and ICE, and describes its use in the field and the controversy around oversight.
Facial recognition is one of the ways we know that ICE is targeting pretty much anybody they come across who they find suspicious. Immigration officials have long used facial recognition at the border, but now agents can use it right on their phones. Using an app called Mobile Fortify, they can just point their camera at you and run your face through a bunch of different databases that does identity verification on the fly. The app might identify you as being somebody who you're not, and maybe that person is a hardened criminal who's in the US illegally, and you might get detained.
The Guardian also reports field use of Mobile Fortify in Minnesota and civil liberty concerns. Now, a very specific question. Were they using this tech on Alex Preddy to recognize him from an incident that happened days prior to his killing?
Meanwhile, new video appears to show Alex Preddy 11 days before he was shot kicking a federal vehicle. Agents are seen tackling him to the ground, and he walks away, a gun visible on his waistband. President Trump reposting the video on social media last night, but not commenting on it.
Now, we have not seen confirmed reporting for any official statement saying Mobile Fortify or any facial recognition software was used to identify or target Preddy based on that earlier incident. So that remains unconfirmed. But the fact that people even have to ask is the warning sign. Anonymity plus surveillance plus unclear narratives equals fear filling the gaps. The point is that security without identity becomes power without consequence, and power without consequence doesn't stay domestic. It travels, and at one point, it tried to take over all of Europe. So tell me in the comments, should any masked federal agent be allowed to operate without clearly visible identification here or abroad? And if ICE is showing up internationally, what should countries demand before accepting support? If you want more of this, remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel to make sure that independent journalism brought to you by us can continue to bring the stories out there that do not get reported on, and more in depth. I'm Michael St. Gregory. See you next time on Raw America.